Our first question for tonight goes, may I know if one's intelligence is a requirement for one to attain Nibbana? I realized I have average or below average IQ. My results weren't very good. Thank you so much for your guidance.
When you say your results weren't very good, I assume you're talking about exams at school or college or somewhere. And that is one way of measuring people's intelligence, but it's not the way of the Dhamma. In the way of the Dhamma, your intelligence is how well you understand what is the path, what is not, how well you learn how to abandon unwholesome Dhammas and cultivate wholesome Dhammas, and anyone can do that. Look at Luang Por Phan and so many of the enlightened masters of Thailand. They are often brought up with very little formal education. Maybe they only finished primary school, if that. I know monks who left school, left home to become a monk, not even being able to read and write. And yet they were very wise people. I would say very intelligent people. So intelligence, of course. Now the modern education system, modern society likes to measure IQ, EQ, measure these things, but it's really, that's only one part of the story, not the whole story. It's a question of whether you recognize a defilement as a cause of suffering when it arises in your mind and what you do about it. Do you abandon it or do you keep it in your mind? And you don't necessarily have to have done a lot of exams or read a lot of books to do that. I'm not saying studying and learning is bad, quite the opposite. Study and learning can be very helpful, of course. It helps to make the world a better place, and it can even help Dhamma practice. But it has to be for the end or the purpose of eradicating mental defilement from your mind, from your thinking, from your life, rather than as an end in itself. And that's the danger with study, learning, trying to improve our IQ, knowing many things, knowing much knowledge. It can become a kind of a distraction or an end in itself. And most people, I think, would admit, you can't, in one lifetime, you can't know everything in this world, or if you try to know everything in this world, well, you'll certainly not have time to practice the Dhamma or free your mind from suffering. So the encouragement is to balance your learning, your study, your use of your intelligence with meditation, cultivating mindfulness, developing insight into the three characteristics. And as I said, many enlightened teachers have not had a lot of formal education, but they've trained their mind very well and seem very smart when it comes to not suffering or how to abandon suffering. And ultimately that must be the purpose of human existence, isn't it? It's to be able to live without suffering, without stress, without falling into suffering. That's our goal. And so many people who do have good intelligence in the normal worldly way and read a lot, studied a lot, think a lot, and have many skills, so many of them go wrong and still have suffering and still get caught into anguish, jealousy, rage, greed, and attachment in different ways. So if you're thinking you're not very intelligent, I wouldn't worry. I would just carry on practicing, listening to the Dhamma, reflecting and bringing it into your heart and doing a lot of mindfulness practice, and you'll definitely become wiser. If you just follow the simple instructions of the Noble Eightfold Path, it will bring you a lot of wisdom, I suggest.
Sadhu Luang Por. Next question. Ajahn just mentioned that there is wrong samadhi and the wrong side of the eightfold path. Could Ajahn please specify these areas more? Sadhu.
Well, all the factors of the Eightfold Path work together and should be cultivated together. So, for instance, with samadhi, we have right effort, samavayama, and that's always the effort to abandon mental defilements, greed, anger, delusion from the mind, and to prevent them from arising again, and then the effort to cultivate non-greed, non-anger, non-delusion, and to preserve and develop further that which has already arisen. So that's a sort of a really good guideline, as well as the practice of mindfulness and development of samadhi. Has to be practiced with right effort. And where does right effort come from? It comes from right view, right understanding. Because it's possible that you can still develop samadhi, what we call lokiya samadhi, practice mindfulness, practice aspects of the path, but with a great attachment to a sense of self. You can develop your meditation and be very proud of it to the point where you become arrogant, conceited. Instead of reducing and letting go of your conceit, you could increase it. So if you may attain a state of samadhi, jhana, one point in the mind, which on one hand is a good thing, a very high and refined state of mind, and takes a lot of effort to develop. But if you're still attaching to it with a strong sense of self, you may use your samadhi to get the better of other people. You might be sitting there and say, well, I can sit in this state of jhana, you can't. You look down on other people. Or you may use it to try and control other people in one way, manipulate people. You may use it to, say, if you were unscrupulous, you didn't have sila, you might use it to try and exploit other people to get their money or their favor, make a reputation for yourself. So you need to practice sila and samadhi and panya, right view, together in order to be using it in the proper, in what this Noble Eightfold Path is for. It's for reducing defilement, reducing the causes of suffering from the mind. And sometimes some people don't get the good instruction, maybe. They don't meet a good teacher, and so they don't realize what they're doing, or they do realize and they're very shameless and unscrupulous. And you can use the human mind and develop the human mind in certain ways, but for promoting or encouraging defilement rather than ending defilement. Another one might be, we can even use it in terms of conflict between people. You try and develop your samadhi to control someone else. It could be in the old-fashioned way, black magic and that kind of thing, or it could be playing mind games, psychological mind games to try and control someone else or hurt someone else. So if you think about it, there are ways you develop the human mind and take aspects of the path, but without sila, samadhi, panya, and right view, it's not the path leading to Nibbana, but there may be some similarities on the surface. But as soon as if you live with that person or got to know that person who was training their mind in that way, you probably wouldn't feel comfortable with them, or you would realize that this person is not letting go of defilement. They're increasing their defilement, maybe. Sometimes it's more just a spiritual person who's gone off, and occasionally you get these teachers who have some ability with mindfulness, with samadhi. Maybe they can talk well and impress people with what they do, but their aim is more just to become famous or get a large retinue of people, make a lot of money. It does happen. So you have to look at the all-round purpose of the path and how these different factors of the path work together. Because sometimes we neglect one or another part of the path, then you won't get the result you want. You want a mind that's free from suffering, pure, without defilement. Sometimes, without realizing it, we're increasing defilement. Are there any more questions? Scroll down a bit there.
Yes, there is another one. Dear Ajahn, sometimes I feel like I have to juggle 3 different worlds. One of paying bills, coordinating with people, and doing housework. Another of Dhamma, where worldly things are an illusion and I shouldn't worry that much. And a third one of taking care of my mother with dementia.
Where 1 and 1 becomes 8. Yellow is blue, and I can have 3 different names. Sometimes I feel exhausted about having to live in
and change between this different worlds many times a day. I think I cannot really focus properly on any of them, particularly on Dhamma. And I think years pass by and I can't advance well in my practice. I try to be mindful, but it's difficult. Do you have any advice, please?
Yep, just keep going, be patient. Everyone will have to face these kind of problems. What you're talking about are very ordinary, I think. Even monks have to pay the bills, in the sense we have to run a monastery, get the bills paid. We have to deal with sick people. We have to learn how to get on together. We have to do the housework, clean the place. So even monks have to deal with these problems, just as you do. Perhaps your particular situation is more demanding, I don't know. But this is life. Life can be challenging, difficult. So number 1, the Buddha said, be patient. Be patient and don't give up. Keep going. And it's of great merit. Maybe you're not seeing the results yet, but to look after a parent, especially if they've got dementia or something, it's a great merit, a great kind of good karma. Something that, even though it must be very tiring and difficult for you, it's a very good thing to do, and it will bring you in the long run. Many good things will come back to you. So be patient with it, keep going. If you have a little bit of time off, well, do some meditation, but don't expect too much if you're in a position where you have to look after parents, housework, pay bills, work. It will be tiring. I would start with just keeping the 5 precepts. Not losing your temper, being patient, being mindful of the duties that you have to perform every day. Cultivate kindness and compassion for the people around you and yourself, and just keep going. And you'll find if you keep going, that becomes the practice itself, not to give up. And you learn things, don't you? You'll learn how to do those duties, those things you've described better, and how to do them in a way where you keep the precepts. You can cultivate many wholesome qualities, including mindfulness and insight. And maybe later, your duties will get less, perhaps, as things change, and you can devote more time to the Dhamma. So I just use that as a way of guiding yourself. How can you introduce the Dhamma into your daily life, and how can you increase your opportunities to practice Dhamma as you perform these various duties in daily life.
Sadhu Lungpo. Next question. Hi Ajahn, I'm curious. May I ask, why does it seem like monks usually require less hours of sleep as compared to lay people, as monks normally wake up early? Thank you, Ajahn.
I think it depends on the monk. Some monks like to sleep a lot. Some need a lot of sleep, and people's bodies do vary. Some people can get by with less. Some people, obviously, some monks will develop samadhi, and that tends to keep you brighter and alert for more hours of the day, maybe. It's hard to generalize here, I think, but generally the Buddha encouraged us to practice wakefulness alertness. And living with Ajahn Chah, he, monks quite naturally and quite normally would be getting up 2 or 3 a.m. living with Ajahn Chah, maybe have a small short rest in the middle of the day, but maybe not, and then often going on till 10 or 11 at night. So you just get used to it as a monk, especially living in a warm country where it's easy to get up in the morning because it's not too cold. Getting up really early in Australia, which is sometimes warm, but it also can be cold, or in Europe, America, it's harder to get up really early because it's cold. It's one practical thing. But we are encouraged to practice wakefulness, alertness. So some people find they like to stay up late and sleep late. Some people like to get up early and sleep early. Everyone is different. I would focus on yourself more than looking at other people, other than maybe get a few good examples from people around you, but then focus on yourself and see where you can improve your effort in your practice. So one simple guideline Ajahn Chah gave was, if you wake up, get up. Because if you wake up in the morning, usually it means you've had some sleep and you're ready to get up. So get up. If you wake up and then you roll over and say, I love my pillow, I want more sleep, and you go back to sleep, well, okay, that's your choice, but you're not training your mind in wakefulness. So there's a really simple guideline. And if you are tired, well, you'll probably sleep more. So myself, for 40 years I've been a monk in the monastery. I've never used an alarm clock because I tend to just let it go naturally. If I'm really tired or ill, I'll sleep a bit more. If I'm not so tired, I wake up, and when I wake up, I get up because I just follow my teacher's instruction. If you're really tired, I guess you can get up and then go to bed again later, maybe. But it's quite a simple guideline. You get to know yourself, don't you? Whether you're indulging or getting enough sleep. Same with food, isn't it? If you keep eating in a meal and trying this, trying that, eating this, eating that, and you're not reflecting on what you're doing, you're not very paying much attention, well, you can get to the point where you say, well, you're just eating as a sort of entertainment without purpose. If you're eating mindfully, well, you just eat and you notice you're full and you don't need any more food and you stop eating. So these basic parts of the practice, like eating, sleeping, things like this, you get to, if you're honest and sincere in training yourself, you get to know, don't you, how much you need to eat, how much you need to sleep, how much physical effort you should put forth in a day, walking, working, things like that. This is, you might call it the nuts and bolts of the practice, where you're learning about yourself as a human being, your body, your mind, your abilities, your limitations. So you can't always compare to other people. Your number one priority is get to know yourself.
Sadhu. Another question. Dear Ajahn Kalyano, thank you very much for the great and uplifting Dhamma talk. You talked today a few times about siddhis, psychic abilities. Are these prerequisites to reach Nibbana, or can one purify their mind, enter the stream, and realize Nibbana without developing psychic abilities? If psychic abilities are an important step in the path, how can one develop them and use them for their benefit and benefit of all? Thank you. With metta.
Well, they're not an absolute prerequisite for Nibbana. You may know there are descriptions of different kinds of arahants, and there's the Sukha Vipassako, who is somebody who develops enough samadhi to develop their vipassana, and they may not develop much in the way of psychic ability. And then there's the Tewicho, who has some psychic ability, maybe can recollect past lives and see beings in other realms and reaches Nibbana. And then there's Cha Apinyo, who develops all 6 of the main psychic powers based on 4th jhana and becomes Arahant. And then there's Patisambhito, who also has this amazing ability to communicate the Dhamma to everyone in all beings and all languages. So there's sort of 4 main classes of Arahant. So if you're going to develop psychic ability, one, it takes a lot of time, many lifetimes, lots of time devoted to meditation. Some people are more into wisdom. They do a lot of reflection, then do a lot of teaching, and they're more like fast-track arahants. I'm just talking very generally here, but just for want of description, fast tracks, simple, to the point, doing the meditation, and then often quite good at explaining the Dhamma to others. Often people who develop psychic ability can be more reclusive because it takes more time to develop psychic ability based on jhana. But the purpose of these psychic powers, if one was to develop them, is for helping people, for teaching, for showing them the Dhamma, for inspiring them, for helping them understand Dhamma. There's no other real purpose for them. They're not for... Otherwise they become like a sideshow, as the Buddha said, just showing off psychic powers. It's just like some kind of sideshow, just trying to impress people. There's no real point to it. They're for teaching. Some people develop psychic ability without even trying or without planning it, because they've done it before in past lives. They develop the samadhi, and as soon as they get samadhi and one-pointedness, psychic ability manifests. Others not so much. Others are more into thinking, explaining, contemplating the Dhamma. So it's like Sariputta and Moggallana, both arahants, but different abilities, different characters. As I said, some of the psychic ability people gain is not because they wanted to develop it, it just happens. When your mind is peaceful and one-pointed, sometimes you know things. You didn't plan it, you didn't want it, it just happens. I asked one monk who can read minds and know the minds of others and talk to beings, communicate with beings in other realms, very fantastical kind of descriptions of what he could do. I said, what's it like? He said, it's so tiring. Got to know other people's, what they're thinking. Tiring, annoying, boring. Because everyone's got so much junk in their mind. If you have to know it all, it's not very good, is it? You're knowing people's defilements. It's hardly something you'd want to know by choice. But if your mind is refined enough, peaceful enough, equanimous enough, maybe you can know these things. So be careful what you wish for. A lot of people say, I want psychic powers. But with psychic powers comes responsibility. There are consequences. They take a long time to develop. And you have to be ready for what it brings you, that kind of knowledge. It's bad enough nowadays having a mobile phone where everyone can contact you and you know what's going on in the world. Imagine you have psychic powers and you know all kinds of things going on in other worlds as well as this world. Oh dear. Be very tiring. So be careful what you wish for.
Sadhu Luang Por. Next, we will ask our next question. Will be asked live. Okay, you may ask your question.
My question is relating to my close friend's brother, who is very suicidal and has attempted a couple of attempts to commit suicide. I was wondering if spreading metta and sharing merits might help. Does sharing merit work when it's a live person? Thank you.
Definitely. Even if you're not living with a person who's very depressed or suicidal, sharing merit and spreading metta in your meditation can have a good effect on them. Even more so if you're actually with them. If you can get to sit down, even if they're not able to meditate because they're too stressed or too unhappy, but you meditate with them, it can have a very calming effect. And I know people who have been suicidal and another person has come and meditated, just doing breathing meditation, and maybe given them a simple reminder to try and follow their breath, let go of the negative thoughts. And that person has felt a lot better very quickly. It all depends on the karma of the person, but meditating for another person and with another person can be a very powerful support for someone who's going through a lot of stress. So I'd say it's always a good thing to do. But you also have to manage your expectations, and just because you meditate for someone doesn't mean to say you can cure them or help them. More or less, you really don't know what's going to happen, but you know it's a good thing, and it should have at least some positive effect on the other person.
Sadhu Lumpur. Next question. Dear Lumpur, is Anata, or not self, just a skillful strategy or perception for relating to phenomena that we can use to abandon suffering? Or is it a fundamental characteristic of all phenomena, along with dukkha and anicca? I hope this question makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a good question. You could probably answer, one answer might be that it's both. It's both a tool for investigation, and it has to be in the beginning, because your starting point in practice is you coming from a place of the idea of a self, permanent self, this body, this mind is me, mine, myself. And you're investigating that. You're questioning, you're observing, you're looking more and more. So at first it's more like a tool, isn't it, to investigate. You use it that way. But it's also a description of the way things are. Having investigated, you might come to a conclusion, I can't see anything that just exists as a self all the time. Many modern meditators describe it, the human being more as a process. The 5 khandhas are like a process of interaction between physical phenomena, mental phenomena, and the ignorant mind. We inherit, as we're born into this world, our mind is mixed up with greed, anger, delusion, grabs these 5 khandhas as self, or mistakenly takes them as a self. So we call them the 5 khandhas of clinging. But if you can see that is a delusion, if you develop enough mindfulness, clarity, insight, and you keep questioning and investigating more and more, you may come to the point where you can see, well, they're not a self. There's something there. It's not that the 5 khandhas are not there. They're there, but the problem is the mind deludedly takes them as self. Me, mine, myself. We take ownership of them. If you can see through that, well, the khandhas just carry on until they die, and then they disband, break up. But the delusion of self is gone through the practice of the path, developing insight. So then, end of problem. No more birth, because there's nobody taking ownership of the 5 khandhas anymore. So your question is more like, it is both the way to get there, but also what you find at the end. And there's no self there. If there's no self, no me, mine, myself, there's nothing more to be born, no one to make karma. End of problem. Why do we have problems in life? Because we keep making karma. Even good karma in the end is a problem because you keep wanting to make it. The arahant is no longer wanting anything. So the mind is not grasping or attaching to anything. But that's something you have to experience through the practice. So as I said, you can use not self as a tool for questioning, looking, observing at the way things are, and hopefully it brings you to the conclusion where your mind really understands. There's nothing to grasp at as self, let it all go, and then you stop making karma, you're not born again.
Sara Lumpur. Another question. Suki Hoto Lumpur. I have a brother-in-law who is Canadian. He doesn't mind following us for dana, offering breakfast. He will not make any offerings. He would only watch. Even to rejoice with the 3 sadhus, it seems very difficult for him. Question: Why is he not to understand being or understand wholesomeness?
Well, everyone's at a different stage in their development of the Dhamma. Sounds like quite a positive thing. He's going to join you to offer dana, which is a very good thing. I assume going to some temple or monastery, hermitage. That's a good thing. He'll be able to absorb on many levels the peace, the well-behaved monks, I hope, the goodness of the whole process. So even if he doesn't physically offer dana, but he's there, his mind will be benefiting from that experience. So don't be too harsh in your judgment. Sometimes people are like that. They're in a monastery where there's an etiquette and a way of doing things, and there's some guy on the side who just sits there, doesn't seem to take part in it, but he's there. That's a good thing. Where else could he be? He could be in the bar getting drunk. That's not a good thing. So if he's in the monastery taking part, he may not bow, he may not offer things, he may not follow all the activities, but if he's there, that's a good thing. Many families are like that, aren't they? There may be 1 or 2 members who participate very actively in Dhamma things like offering dana, meditation retreats. There may be someone else in the family who very rarely participates in those things. But it doesn't mean to say they're necessarily totally against them. They may be against them, but they may be fully supportive. It's just they have other duties and they feel their responsibility, their priority is to go out and earn money. But they don't mind if some of that money is used to do good works, charity or supporting Sangha. If their partner or family member goes to meditate, they're very happy for them, even though they don't meditate themselves. We call this anumodana, anumodana, giving your anumodana to someone doing good, even if you're not particularly doing it yourself. So don't rush to judge things. There may well be more that this person or other people in a similar situation could do, true, but also recognize the good that has been done already. And if they're there and they're taking part on some level, that's good. And encourage them to do more.
Sara Lumpur. Another question. Dear Ajahn Kalyano, thank you for the Dhamma talk. How can we overcome strong views on our perceived inability of getting good at a skill? For example, I can never get good at writing because I've never been good at it since I was born.
Well, perceptions can be a big obstacle. It may be true. We're not good at anything when we're born, are we? Babies can't do much at all other than cry. But then we learn. And partly it's environment, partly it's family and people around us. If you want to become an Olympic gold medalist, well, they have to start you skiing or swimming when you're 2 years old, don't they? So if your parents didn't start you swimming or skiing when you're 2 years old, doesn't mean to say you'll never become an Olympic skier, gold medalist, but you'll have it harder when you come up against the person who did start when they're 2 years old. So environment, people around us are a big part of our life, but in the end it's our own innate qualities, isn't it? So say with meditation, some people, we get really jealous of them. They sit meditation for the first time, 10 years old, and straight into jhana. Oh, not fair, not fair. Someone else has been doing it for 50 years, still struggling. That's karma, isn't it? The Buddha said the karma determines these things. Somebody may have done meditation for many lifetimes, so this lifetime they find it easy. Someone else may have found it difficult many lifetimes and didn't do much many lifetimes. And this life they also find it difficult and don't do very much. It all depends on different karma, different obstacles, different things happening in that person's mind and their stream of consciousness. So, one aspect is how you view yourself. They always say the power of positive thinking. If you tell yourself you can do it and you will do it and you work at it, well, it doesn't matter whether you start when you're 2 years old or 50 years old, go for it. And that's part of my job and other teachers, is to encourage you to try harder and overcome some of these negative perceptions you might have about yourself. In the end, it doesn't matter, does it, what was happening when you were born? What matters is what you're doing right now today. So if you're sitting there saying, oh, I couldn't meditate when I was born and I can't meditate now, you're already kind of undermining your effort, aren't you? What you have to do is set aside all of that and say, today I'm going to do it, and I'm not going to get up until I've done it, and just go for it. That's what the Buddha did, isn't it? He sat under the Bodhi tree and he said, I'm not getting up until I've pacified my defilements and freed my mind from the defilements, and I'm not going anywhere until I've done it. If you really want enlightenment, you've got to have that kind of commitment, that kind of attitude. Like the monk I know goes to the Bodhi tree in India and he gets an old robe and he ties it around his chest, ties himself to the railings, which now they built around the Bodhi tree. They never used to have them, but now they do. So he'll tie himself to the railings, and he said, I'm not going anywhere. And he'll stay there all night. He does get up in the morning, of course, but at least he gives it a go for maybe 12 hours or something. So sometimes you need a bit of oomph in your practice, Set aside the thought, I can't do this, and say, I don't care whether I can do it or not, I'm just going to try, and you go for it. That's what I would recommend. Next question. Time is short.
So this same person has another question. Someone I know shared that right effort is not about putting in hard work in a conventional sense, but the opposite of effort, trying hard, which is about letting go, relaxing. How should I approach right effort?
Well, as we talked about earlier, right effort is this effort to abandon the unwholesome and cultivate the wholesome. So that's your reflection, isn't it? You have to observe what's going on as you put forth effort in your practice. And we can use a lot of words, letting go, relaxation, trying hard, working hard. Sometimes these words work for individuals. So, I'm not sure there's an absolute right or wrong with how you describe your right effort in your practice, but you have to observe what's going on. And if you're trying too hard with a lot of self, yes, that can be distracting and agitating to the mind and will probably lead you to disappointment, because if you have a lot of self and a lot of wanting, I want samadhi, I want peace, I want to control this mind, as long as you haven't achieved that, you are not going to be happy, and maybe the very wanting is stopping you from achieving it because it's putting pressure on your mind and so on. So you have to observe the quality of your effort and see if you're stirring up more defilements or you are actually bringing them under control and developing the qualities that will help you gain more control of your mind. And so sometimes we do need to relax, but at the same time, sometimes we need to work hard as well. And if you say relax too much, you'll just fall asleep or just sit there letting your mind go all over the place. I don't think you can generalize here. You really need to look at your own effort as you're practicing and see what's needed. And, we either going too hard at it and that becomes an obstacle, or we're not going hard enough and spend too much time fantasizing, sleeping, eating, indulging. We go one way or the other, and until we found the middle way, once you've cracked it, you found the middle way, you'll probably get enlightened. So I wouldn't be too worried about this problem, but just keep learning from the effort that you put forth. And that's a large part of the practice is about this, learning what is right effort, the things you do, how you spend your time, the approach, the attitude. As you're learning, you will see what works to help abandon defilements and what way is not abandoning defilements, and a way that is not going to work. You get to learn that and know that, and then you can adjust as you go along.
Sarah Luang Por. There are 2 questions left. Hi Ajahn, may I ask, how can one find a suitable teacher in the Dhamma? Thank you.
Make a wish. Start there. I wish that I find a good teacher. That wish can become what we call an aditana, a resolution, a determination. May all the good things I've done so far and all the good things I'm going to do in the future come together to form the causes for me to meet a wise, skillful teacher. So you start with a thought, a resolution or an aditana. Then you start talking. Where are the good teachers? Go online. When I say talking, that includes reading, verbalization, searching, talking to people. Where are the good teachers? Who are the good teachers? Reading online. Where are the good teachers? Who are the good teachers? Finally, you go to action. You buy the ticket, you go there. If they're in another place, if they're down the road, well, you walk there. If they're a plane ride away, you get on the plane. So there has to be the thought, the verbalization, the action, and then you'll get there. If you're just stuck in one of these levels, you're just thinking about it for the next 10 years, I really should find a teacher. Oh, it'd be so good to have a teacher. But you're just thinking about it, well, obviously nothing's going to happen. If you're just talking about it, you tell your friend, oh, I really would like to meet a teacher. We should really find a good teacher. Okay, that's better, but it's still pretty limited, isn't it? But if you actually travel, things can happen. So depending on where these teachers are and how far from where you live, really this day and age, you've got no excuse. You can travel the world. I mean, I had to travel from UK to Thailand to find a teacher. Nowadays, it's cheaper to get on a plane and travel than it was when I started. So it's actually easier for you. And maybe, you can get a bus, drive, walk. You think who becomes an enlightened person? It's people who are not put off by this kind of obstacle. Where's the teacher? So Luang Por Man knew that. Luang Por Man, great Luang Por Man, the forest monk, he would walk around Thailand and he often tried to hide himself away. So he'd make it hard for the monks. So the monk could be 300 kilometers away. They say, oh, I've got to go and see Luang Por Man, ask him some questions. I'm stuck in my practice. Fair enough. In those days, no plane, no car, no nothing. You just walk. So, okay, let's walk. So they walked for 3 months to find Luang Por Man. Go here, go there, ask many people, lots of obstacles, get malaria on the way, have a few days when they didn't get food, struggle, meet a tiger. After 3 months, they get to Luang Por Man. Luang Por Man, finally get there. Ask the questions, one night of bliss, get the answers all sorted, and then walk back again. Nowadays, it's like, oh, there's no plane, there's no car, oh, I can't go. Everyone's so lazy now. Got to get a bit of effort. If you think having a teacher is going to help you get enlightened and you want to be free from suffering and you don't want any more suffering in your life, put forth a bit of effort. Get out there. Get on the plane, get on the car, whatever you need to do to find the teacher, do it. Spend the next 10 years looking for your teacher, if that's what's required. But don't just sit there thinking about it. You're not going to get anywhere. Sorry if I'm coming across a bit facetious, but you get this question a lot, and a lot of people seem to just think about it and don't really do much about it. So put in some effort, go and find the teacher.
Sarah Luang Por. Last question. Dear Ajahn, recently in this part of the world, news has been discussed a lot that a certain country has been using people's organs as a way of earning money. The organs from its own people or people against its political power were taken forcefully and were still alive. It's like a hell realm story. I don't know how to think when in this modern world there are still human beings who can do such horrific things to another human being. Is it too much for us to ask all human beings to have a decent, good heart?
No, I don't think it's too much to ask, but you have to manage your expectations because people take time to change, and people in certain situations, whether it's the nature of the politics of a country or poverty or just wrong views, there's so many different things impinging on people. Unfortunately, some people go completely in the wrong direction in life and do these horrible things. I'm not sure that's anything new, but maybe that just hearing about it is new in the sense that this could have happened 100 years ago, but you wouldn't know about it maybe. Whereas now news travels fast, so we are hearing about things more. And some of the things we hear are very shocking and unpleasant, but maybe there's some hope there, because if we're hearing about it, that means people will become more aware, maybe they can do something about it. But the wheels of government, society turn slowly. So, sometimes it's the people's values to change or the situation to change takes a long time. So this is why the Buddha taught us to practice the Brahma-viharas. So our basic attitude is one of kindness, compassion, altruistic joy for those who are successful and doing well, maybe, but also equanimity in the case where maybe people are abusing each other, hurting each other, but there's not much you can do. You can't possibly control the whole world. You can wish that every human being develops the goodness in their heart, and they do all have some seeds of goodness in there somewhere. But sometimes some human beings are not ready for that, so they're following the path of making a lot of bad karma. So you wish them to change, but you also have to manage that expectation and say, well, maybe it will take some time. So while that is going on, you're still going to carry on your practice, and don't let it get you down, the fact that some of the people in the world are not changing for the better yet. Because that's nothing new. Again, it's karma, and there's people are on their different levels of their spiritual path, and some are very evolved, luckily. Some are sort of in the middle and battling away between good and evil, and unfortunately some are at the bottom and still caught up in very evil ways. But that shouldn't deter you in your practice. Maybe the opposite. Maybe if you reflect on it, when you hear about evil in the world, it should spur you on to practice all the harder, because you realize how uncertain life is and that there's a lot of danger and evil out there in the world. Therefore, should hurry up and practice to develop the good. You don't know how long you've got and how long your good opportunity will last, how long you'll be alive and how long you can practice Dhamma. So even bad news you can turn to your advantage in this way. You use it to spur you on in your practice, even though it is bad news.
Saru Lumpur. That's all the questions we have for tonight.
Okay, well, thank you very much for joining. A long session. I guess that's because at the moment we're not having them every week, so had to fit in a lot tonight. But keep up your Dhamma practice, don't be discouraged, and we wish you all good health, peace and happiness.